Welcome to the WagerTalk Podcast for the week ending May 27th. We're going to take a look tonight, big show with William Bernanke. He'll kick things off here in a moment from CG Analytics. He's going to join us, take us behind the counter, tell us where the money is going with the NBA and NHL playoffs. We'll talk some baseball as well. We'll have another edition of Handicappers Corner. Ralph and myself are going to take a look at a deep dive in Major League Baseball. Then we're going to have all three of us, Dave Cokin, Ralph Michaels, and myself. We will talk baseball Friday night action. We'll take a look at the two playoff games with the hockey and basketball. And then, of course, at the end of the show, it is best bet time. Each of us will give you our best bet for the upcoming weekend. Mark Seidel is behind the controls, and I'm your host, Marco D'Angelo. We're going to get this party started, but it is Memorial Day weekend, and we've got a special offer for you. You're listening to the podcast. We appreciate you guys tuning in each week, and for doing so, if you want to jump on board with either Dave Cokin, Ralph Michaels, or myself, Marco D'Angelo, you can get the 3-day all-access package. What better way to spend the weekend than to do it with us? You can get all of our plays at a discount. Normal rate is $69 for a 3-day package, but if you use coupon code MEMORIAL25, you'll get $25 off that package. Pick your favorite guy, jump on board, or better yet, get all three of us. All right, let's get the party started and bring in tonight's first guest. You know him. He's with us each and every week. William Bernanke from CG Analytics. Will, welcome to the show. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, great, Marco. How you been?
Well, it's been a good week for me, other than the Preakness on Saturday. That's my only blemish here in the last 9 days, but I guess I can live with that. How's things been for you? That's more important. We're here with the Western Conference has been decided in the NBA playoffs, and Golden State pulled off the 4-game sweep. Even though, if you're a Portland backer, you really got to be, frustrated with them. They had the lead in all 4 games heading in second half, deep second half, fourth quarters, whatever, and then ended up losing all 4 games. How was that for the house? Did you guys fare well?
Yeah, this is interesting. This is one of the strangest series you'll ever see. Before I even get into how the house did in this, just a crazy fact that I heard. I forgot where it was, but Portland led in this series for about 20 more minutes or something like that than Golden State did for the whole series, and to lose all 4 games. I wonder if that's a record, to actually have the lead in 20 more minutes of play than the other team and not win a game. That's got to be something. And it affects the in-game running betting, which I'll get to in a second. But House did very well, especially in games 3 and 4, where bettors were backing Portland. In both of those games, it was certainly evident in the lines, the way the lines moved. And the first half in Game 3 was a loss. That's we can never seem to get that number high enough. And I've suggested to bump that even to a level of a new, treat it like a different game. Those 0-2 first halves home team situations. But we can worry about that in our next series if that comes to pass. But games 3 and 4 were great. It was a good series. Amazing with Golden State winning and sweeping. You would think that wouldn't be the case.
Will, let's continue on with that thought process. And you talked about the in-game wagering. And with Portland, I'm guessing that the in-game was probably a negative for you. With Portland leading, people were jumping on the Warriors at a pick 'em or even a dog price, and then them finishing the game. Am I correct in that thought?
In Game 3, you're correct. The Golden State was the play in game by most of the bettors. Not as crazy as you would think, but Game 4, which was this is unbelievable. Where Game 4, before the game, bettors were clearly on Portland, and they were chasing the Blazers all game, right through, all the way through overtime. So we did very well in game with the Warriors winning, and coming back from big deficits and winning.
The Eastern Conference Finals look like it might be going the distance. They're tied at 2-2. Game 5 is tonight while we're taping. It's going to be tipping off here shortly. How has this series been for you? I know, you talked about those 0-2 teams coming home for Game 3. And once again, Toronto, was there for that game. They managed to squeak out the win in Game 3, took double overtime. But, Will, we saw the game go from Toronto in Game 3 being a favorite of 2.5 to end up being a 3-point underdog. And I even saw a couple places around town where Milwaukee tipped off at minus 3.5 in Game 4, and Toronto basically pillar to post took care of Milwaukee. How was that for the book with that game?
Specifically, Game 4 was a tremendous result for us. Probably the best result of the playoffs thus far. That was one-sided action, Bucks all the way, and amazing because you'd think that flip in the line would attract some Toronto money at some point. And it didn't. It just kept going Milwaukee all the way through, money line, parlays, everything, all Milwaukee. As far as the rest of the series, Game 1 was the only loss we had, and that was really a bad beat for the house. But you can't win them all, and bettors eked that one out at the very end with that scoreless drought that Toronto had. Game 2, bettors came back with Toronto, and we saw that blowout, and that was pretty much dead from the beginning. And then Games 3 and 4, bettors were on Milwaukee. Those were, Game 3 being a tough one as well, going to overtime. That either way, and then of course Game 4 we just discussed.
Well, I don't know if you have a question to, if you have an answer to this question, but when one series is over in 4, now we're into Game 5 tonight as we're recording this, with the series tied 2-2. Do you tend to get more action at the beginning of a series, like the first game or two? Or if we go to Game 5 and 6 and it's a tight series, do you get more action just as a general in the playoffs?
The longer the series goes, the more action we tend to get. And that's because bettors seem to have a better it's just like kind of like coaches, I guess a good analogy. The longer a coach gets to see a team, the better prepared they should be. More film, all that stuff. And bettors probably feel the same way. And it's a competitive series, so they don't feel like they don't have any chance. They feel like they have a read on it. They see maybe a pattern, and you'll see a bigger handle with each game, especially now that it's isolated and the Western Conference is over.
I know this afternoon on the Las Vegas Sports Line, you, of course, were on with Dave Cokin and myself, and we talked about the projected series prices for the NBA's finals with Golden State looking ahead to Milwaukee or Toronto. Can you share that with our listeners?
Sure. It's really tough to price these series because Golden State won't have home court, but you just do the best you can at this point, and certainly the longer the Toronto series goes, that'll affect the price too with any fatigue, because Golden State will be well rested, and this isn't the NHL where teams that seem to sweep somebody come out flat as can be the next series. So taking that into account and just, with assuming, let's just say Toronto wins and in 7, use that as an example, Golden State should be about a 400 favorite against Toronto, pretty significant even without home court. And then against Milwaukee, about a $2 favorite in that range. They'll be favored. And then as far as Game 1 lines, probably Golden State will be a road favorite at Toronto. I suspect 1.5, something in that range, in that ballpark. And then Milwaukee will be favored in Game 1. I could see them being maybe 2.5, something in that, that vicinity.
Switching over to hockey, Will, we've got the Stanley Cup Final set. It is St. Louis. They'll be taking on Boston. Game 1 in Boston. Where is have you had any action on this one yet? The game's not till Monday, but obviously, with the hockey, the Knights, we know that the handle drops off after the night season ends. How was the last series, and how did the Sharks and Blues end up for you guys? And have you seen any money in this one so far?
The Blues winning was a good result for us. Sharks had a lot of early money, at the 115, 120 level. So that attracted Sharks money, and that was a good result, the Blues winning. And as far as the series, this is an interesting Stanley Cup Finals. I don't recall a game being played on a Memorial Day Game 1. I'm sure it could have happened, but I can't recall in recent memory that happening. So I think this handle is going to be going to get, just pick up some steam on Sunday into Monday with people coming into town. It should be a pretty big handle in Game 1. But right now it's been very slow, and we're seeing two-way action on Game 1. The series price, though, is seeing some significant action where Bruins are getting majority of the money right now. So there's a good chance that, being a holiday, people coming from back east, the Bruins get some money from people from back there.
Well, let's switch gears again, this time to the NFL. I know a few weeks ago you guys opened up Week 1 NFL lines. Just this past week, you opened up not only lines for weeks 2 through 16, you also had some money lines in there for some of the marquee games and some totals. Can you walk us through what type of action you gotten and some of those games, breaking out couple games during couple weeks that you've had significant action on?
Yeah. The money line and the totals have seen nothing yet, which is surprising. Especially the totals. You would think some of the more savvy bettors out there would have jumped on those totals, but nothing yet. But certainly we've seen the sides and some of the same teams here, right on down the line, all the way through. I'm just going to run through some here, and then you could stop me when you want to jump in on a comment here. But Week 2, early money is on Dallas, on the Bears, and the Browns. The matchups are, they're playing the Redskins, Broncos, and Jets, respectively. Week 3, early money's on the Bears, on the Lions, who are hosting the Chiefs there, so they're taking the home dog early. And again, the Browns. So apparently, bettors feel we mispriced the Browns, a few of these games. And then Week 4, nothing. Week 5, we got some early money on the Packers, and they're at the Cowboys. Week 6, Browns again hosting the Seahawks. They're on the Browns. Week 7, the Patriots. And I figured we would start to see some anti-Jet money show up with their shenanigans going on. So that's not surprising there in Week 7. Week 8, again, the Browns at the Patriots. They're back in Cleveland. And then the Packers and Chiefs, Packers money. And then 2 more here. Week 10, early money on the Giants versus the Jets. Again, I think that's just an anti-Jet sentiment. And then Week 12, bettors are on the Ravens, the first time they popped up here at the Rams.
Will, seeing the pattern there, that was going to be my next question to you. When you do this and put these lines up, do you see a pattern develop as opposed to just, random games that people are taking? Or do you see that pattern where, okay, they think you mispriced this particular team, maybe you've overvalued them or undervalued them, and then they're picking spots throughout the whole season of going against or with a particular team? Usually,
we would think the first thought you had where there'd be a pattern with teams mispriced, but when you're looking at some of these teams, especially Cleveland, who has become such a public team and basically a darling for bettors, dating back to last year, towards the middle and the end of last year, it's not surprising. We anticipated that, and we're glad to take the money, not saying we're right or wrong, but glad to get that action, knowing that it's coming, no matter what number you put out there pretty much at that point, especially when they're playing, New England or some of the bigger games here. The Jets not as much, but the Week 2 Jet money, that's just after the fact of McCagnon getting fired. I think that was after we put the numbers out, so not surprised. But, hosting the Seahawks, that cross-country type of thing, each game had its own little personality.
One thing I want to mention, too, is that if you need a reason to, let's just mention them, the Venetian, the Palazzo, the Cosmo, Hard Rock, Palm, Silverton, or Tropicana, excuse me, I love going in and getting these packets. I look at this the entire season. So when you go into September, you know exactly what the thought process was from CG Technologies in the summer. And even in October and November, I look at where these lines were. It helps you handicap. It helps you realize how far a team has moved, how far a team has fallen back, or where you may get some value because of a misperception of a team in the summer. So this is one of those times where I do like that paper, having these packets that they have at these sports books to grab and hold on until the season starts.
Absolutely. Having a packet's a must. It gives you just an added tool to become a savvy bettor, and it's just good for entertainment value as well. Even if the games you're not interested in, just to see the current line as opposed to where it was in late May, is fascinating. You could see a 6-point favorite become a 6-point dog in the week 11, let's say, and you just kind of laugh at it and say, wow, what were they thinking? Because nobody can get it perfectly, can get it right 100% of the time, and it makes for great entertainment.
Our teams just play better than people thought or play worse. Before we let you go, this is the holiday weekend. So, of course, it's a huge car racing weekend with the Coca-Cola 600 and the Indy 500. Do you guys have action on both of those races at your sports books?
We do, yeah. And also, best place to get a bet in on those would be our app. Making sure you download the app and sign up for an account. I mean, we got, NBA playoffs. At the very least, Game 6 will be this weekend. Of course, Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals is on Monday. Baseball's in full swing. You got red-hot teams just giving away free money right now. The Yankees, the Red Sox, the Rays, the way they're playing lately. I mean, just teams all over the place. So you got to get that app, go to one of the books, and sign up for an account. And you got to prepare like a pro to bet like a pro, and also don't avoid those lines on a holiday weekend so you can enjoy time with your friends and family.
Yeah, great stuff as always, Will. As I always say to you, buddy, good luck this week on all the action there at the book, except the games I'm on. I can't wish you luck on those ones.
Absolutely. I'm with you there.
All right, Will, have a great Memorial Day weekend. We'll talk to you next week, buddy. And that was Will Bernanke from CG Analytics. Give him a follow on Twitter at the Moneyline Guy. Great follow. Guys, we're going to step out for a quick break. When we come back, Ralph and I are going to take a deep dive into Major League Baseball. Ralph's brought some TNA with him, as he usually does, and I'm going to take a look at some pitchers, earners, and burners for you so far this season. That's up next on the WagerTalk Podcast.
It's Manic Monday, and that means every pick at WagerTalk.com is just $9. Get a play in any sport valued at up to $30 for just $9 each and every Monday at WagerTalk.com.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. It's time for Handicappers Corner, and we're going to take the deep dive into baseball. And our TNA guy, Ralph Michaels, no, don't panic. He's not doing real TNA. He's giving us some trends and angles, thank God. Buddy, what'd you bring with you this week here for some baseball stuff?
Just something simple, and I think it often gets overlooked. If you look at the first pitch, which is free at WagerTalk every day, you go to the Cal Sports page and you can download it. And the one thing is, I had a couple of people reach out to me. People are afraid to register. They think we're going to bombard them with emails, and we're not like that. And if you register, you only have to register once to download our free products. Yep. And when you register, you don't have to give a credit card. So it's not like these free trials where you have to put a credit card number in. You just have to register, give your name, give your email, and then once you have that account, you can download all the free products I put up on my homepage every day, including the first pitch. The first one is simple, lefties. I think lefties often get overlooked, but there's some teams this year that have been very good against lefties, including the A's, who are 11-5 plus 6.3 units, Tampa Bay at 10-5 plus 5.0 units, and Toronto 8-6 plus 4.3 units. On the flip side, the teams that have done the worst against lefties, the LA Angels, I talked about them now, 4-13 minus 10.7 units on the year. Boston 5-8 minus 7.3 units, and Philadelphia 4-8 minus 5.7 units. Looking at some teams that have done very well over-unders against lefties. Seattle 11-3 to the over, Detroit 7-1, Pittsburgh 10-4, Atlanta 8-3-1, and teams that have looked to go under against lefties. The Reds are 4-8, Milwaukee's 5-10. Tampa Bay 4-11.
Good stuff there, Ralph. Looking at, I'm coming in here with some pictures and talking about, guys to back that have been just absolute money machines this year. And the guy that has produced the biggest profit so far this year, I could probably let you guys take guess, and you would use probably 5 guesses and still not get to him. And that is Jordan Lyles. This guy, for my Pirates, didn't expect this out of him this year. He's made 8 starts. The team is 7-1 in his starts. And granted, when he starts on the road, he's always going to be an underdog. So he has produced a profit of 7.9 units. So if you flat bet him $100 in every start, you're up $790 on him. And that is not a pitcher that I saw coming from him this year, Ralph. Total surprise for the Pirates. Now, the next guy, this is a big-name pitcher, and, everybody could get it. He's doing it a different way this year. Clayton Kershaw was on the DL to start. He's only made 7 starts so far this season. But the team is a perfect 7-0 in his starts. He's got an ERA, low 3s, which, for anybody else, that's great. But we're used to seeing Clayton Kershaw, barely over 2. So we look at it and say, he's not pitching as good as he's been, but he's learned to pitch. He doesn't have the velocity that he's had in the last few years, but he's definitely getting the job done. 7-0 in his starts. Obviously, he's a favorite all the time. So you're looking at just 7 units with him on that 7-0. And Matt Shoemaker is the number 3 guy at 6.9. 5 games that he has been in, they are 5-0 with him. And, of course, he's been an underdog several times, and that is why the 6.9. Now, there's always good stuff. I'm going to put out a couple guys that didn't get up there in the units, but their team records are phenomenal with them. And the couple losses have been because they're favorites, and it eats them up. Obviously, one of those guys is Justin Verlander. They're 9-2 in his 11 starts, but he's only plus 5.2.
You're losing 4 units. You're losing almost 4 units probably in those 4 starts.
When you lose one with him. Another guy that's been, really good for Berrios for Minnesota, Jose Berrios, and I know this is a guy that you like. Dave likes him. I mean, he's pitched phenomenal for Minnesota. They're 8-2 in his 10 starts, and he's got a plus of 5.7. And again, because the market is catching up to Minnesota, laying a little more of a price with them. But those are a few pitchers there on the top end. If you got a top side, you got to have a bottom side, Ralph. And the 2 bottom pitchers you would not expect to be here. Chris Sale, you can get. He's the second worst. Yeah, he had that horrible
start.
Couple
games as 300 favorites. It's not hard to lose 9 units in 3 losses.
Yeah, well, he's 3-7. They're 3-7 in his 10 starts for minus 10.1. But he does not hold the record. The record is Max Scherzer. This season, they are 2-9 in his 11 starts. And he's still commanding the big price. And they are minus 11.7 with Scherzer on the mound.
Played against him a couple times, and it's scary to do, but you have to look at current form, and you just got to, you take advantage of these pitchers that are having off years. They have an issue, and you're still when you're a multi Cy Young winner. He has 2 Cy Youngs, right?
Yeah.
When you have that type of respect, Joe Public is still going to bet you, and you're going to have to pay the premium. So take advantage as a gambler playing against those guys.
Yep, that is the earners and burners on the pitchers. Anything else you want to add before we head out?
Yeah, I want to mention quickly, baseball, you don't hear as much teams off a home loss. It's not like football, the Steelers losing a home game or the Patriots losing a home game. But there are some teams, and these are quality teams, that have rebounded off home losses and have shown us a profit. This year, off a home loss, the Cubs are 6-0, plus 6 units. They were also I believe off the top of my head, 13-7 last year off a home loss, so they were very profitable. Philadelphia is number 2 at 7-2. The LA Dodgers 5-1. So you have 3 teams that are going to probably win their division or be very close, that when you're off a home loss, you can expect them to rebound. Teams that play poorly off a home loss, these are teams that aren't good. So if you're off a home loss as a favorite, you don't look for them to bounce back. Pittsburgh is 1-7 off a home loss as a favorite, minus 6.6 units. San Diego 3-7, minus 5.4 units. And Toronto 3-5, minus 3.6 units. Now, also, teams off an away win as a dog. Let me tell you, there's only 2 teams in all of baseball that are over plus 2 units after a win as an away dog. So if you have a team that pulls the upset, do not expect them to pull the upset back-to-back games. It's that simple. Arizona is 8-5 plus 4.1 units. Seattle is 5-3 plus 3.0 units, and that was all with that early start they had when they were a dog and they had that winning streak. In fact, in Major League Baseball this year, teams off a win as an away dog are 69-106, minus 29 units. So if you just bet every team that pulled an upset as an away dog, you are plus over 23 units this year, fading them in the next game.
Great stuff, Ralph. And guys, if you're not following Ralph on Twitter, you just don't like money, because he is constantly tweeting out stuff like this. It's in the first pitch. He has different things. But when he comes up with these angles that he pulls from the database, he will do a one-off and send out, what is a team in such and such an angle, and then you actually will show the printout of those teams a lot of times from the query, so people can actually see it. And just follow you, Cal Sports LV, at Cal Sports LV, a great Twitter follow, guys. Check him out. He's a wealth of information. And, of course, you can always follow me as well at Marco in Vegas. All right, we're going to step out from Handicappers Corner. When we come back, Dave Cokin will be joining us, and we are going to break down NBA, NHL, and some Friday night primetime games in Major League Baseball. That's all next here on the WagerTalk Podcast.
Every Tuesday, WagerTalk.com offers a best bet selection from its hottest handicapper. It's a great way to introduce yourself to WagerTalk.com with a big best bet winner for just $2 on $2 Tuesday.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. We're going to jump in and look at some NBA, NHL, and some baseball for the weekend. Guys, we're taping on Thursday night, so obviously Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals with Milwaukee and Toronto has not tipped off yet. Looking at this series, after Toronto takes both games in Toronto, first game was a double overtime in Toronto, and then they pretty much went pillar to post in the second one to knot the series. Are we looking probably at 7 games here, do you think? Or is Milwaukee get this thing done in 6? Start with you, Dave.
Milwaukee better win Game 5. Because if they lose this game, then I think they'll be gone in 6. I have a feeling it's going to end in 6 regardless. Whoever wins tonight will take the next game, but it's just a guess.
Ralph, as you're watching live the Cubs in Philadelphia, something happened you didn't like because you whipped the computer, the finger. If we ever start live streaming, it's going to be fun watching this podcast, the stuff that goes on behind the scenes.
Then I'll have to start putting a napkin around my Miller Lite cans and writing Pepsi on them or something so people don't know.
Yeah. Ralph, you look at this series, and Milwaukee's gotten all of the action in this. We saw, Game 3. We know the history. Home teams down 0-2, and they made you pay a price for it. But then they totally reversed the line in Game 4, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous. And the money still poured in on Milwaukee. Now we're looking at this at 2-2. Milwaukee got both games at home. Remember game one, they never covered game one until that final 28 seconds to get that one, and then game two was just a total blowout. Milwaukee, what do you think has changed with Milwaukee, because they look so superior in game two? We looked at Kawhi Leonard. He looked tired, after game three, but they played a big game in, game four. Everybody was looking and figuring that, with Giannis fouling out in game three, that was the difference in that second overtime. Tonight, I agree with Dave. I think the winner of tonight takes this, especially if it is Milwaukee.
I think it goes 7. And unless Toronto wins tonight. If Toronto wins tonight, then I think Toronto wins it in 6. And I've said this all along, getting to the conference finals is a stepping stone. It's a process. Milwaukee's a team that went to the playoffs last year, lost in the first round, and hadn't been to the playoffs in multiple years the seasons prior. You've seen the progression of these Eastern Conference teams. It was the bad boys, and then the Bulls, and then Boston, and then Cleveland, and then Miami, and then Cleveland again. And getting to the finals is a step. The pressure the Bucks are now dealing with is something they've never had to deal with before. They blew through the first 2 rounds. They weren't tested in those games. There were no games decided by 7 or more, and now they're finally put in the spotlight and in that pressure. I think if Toronto can win this game, Milwaukee has all the pressure on them, they lose. If Milwaukee wins this game, I think Toronto wins at home, and we get back to Game 7, and we'll see how Milwaukee handles the pressure again. But to me, it's a game that Milwaukee's played better on the road, actually. They've shot better. They've gone over they've shot better. They just haven't played the same type of defense on the road. Kawhi's the question. He looked banged up Game 4. We know he had a little bit of a leg injury. These games being played every other night now, it's not to his advantage. You have a leg injury in the first series, and you have, 5 days off? Or, Golden State, Houston had, 4 or 5 days off? But now in the finals where they're playing every other day, Milwaukee does have a more deep team, a better bench, which is to their advantage. But if you can get your starters playing them 42 minutes a game and they survive the next few days, I give the edge to Toronto.
I know one thing. Golden State's sitting back just rooting for just keep this series going. Play the 7. We'll be waiting for whoever comes when we get there.
Probably just as soon Toronto win it, because then they get the home court advantage, which they wouldn't have against Milwaukee.
Which we've seen with Golden State doesn't really matter with them.
But you'd still rather play the first 2 at home.
All right, guys. Talking about, before we head into the baseball for this weekend, Dave, we've got the Stanley Cup Final set up. St. Louis and Boston. Boston finally, gets back to play for the Stanley Cup. St. Louis, I know that they were there. What was it? Their first year in the league? They got
very first year. The way they set things up, it was not a good idea. But if you want a league with bad ideas, the NHL's been the kingpin for a long time. And in the very first year of expansion, they decided to make sure that one of the expansion teams got to the Stanley Cup Finals. So they had the established 6 teams in one division and the 6 expansion teams in the other division or conference. So it ends up St. Louis and Boston, and the Blues had no chance in this series. They fought hard, but the Bruins won in 4 straight, and of course, the overtime goal in Game 4 is one of the most famous goals of all time, as Bobby Orr is airborne after getting tripped and scoring the winning goal, and that was the end of it. But the series was a joke. I mean, the Bruins were way better. It's a little more competitive this time around.
Definitely so. Is there anybody playing better? I mean, obviously, there's 2 teams left, but I mean, Boston down the stretch.
No, they've been the best team in the playoffs. They're playing great hockey. The first line, when it's right, is the best first line, and I've said this all year long. That Bergeron line is the best line in the NHL when those guys are out there. I know Marchand can be a mental case at times, and he'll lose his mind and take a stupid penalty, but it's still that is just a really, really explosive line. The problem for the Blues in this series, and don't get me wrong, I'm taking nothing away from what they've accomplished. It's just phenomenal to see a team that was the worst in the league at the turn of the calendar year, January 3rd, and here they are in the finals. I think the problem for them here is they're running into a similar style of team. Physical, defensive-oriented, and the Bruins are better at it than the Blues by a considerable margin. I just don't think the Blues can beat them 4 times.
You look at this and, the winning streak of Boston coming in here, and then the great story with Bennington for St. Louis. I mean, we could go and say, all right, is this stage going to be too big for him? He's shown so far that no stage has been too big so far.
This guy's so mild-mannered. He treats a shutout win as, okay, next. He is one cool cucumber.
Last 3 games, he's given up a total of 2 goals. And Dave, we've talked about it so many times. This is the one sport that no matter how much talent is on one side, if one guy, and that one guy is your goalie, and he stands on his head, he can will a team almost to victory.
We've seen it a lot of times over the years where a goalie has caught absolute fire in the playoffs, and the better team got knocked off because they just could not get the puck past some goalie who was just standing on his ear. And that's the biggest thing the Blues have going for them here is Binnington he's staying hot. He's not cooling off.
Well, for those that don't know, Dave talked about how the Blues were last on January 3rd.
Yep.
Bennington's first start was January 7th. And he ended up going 24-5-1. So you want to talk about why a team turned around? I mean, that explains it all.
And Dave, with the price on this series, I'm seeing a series price of -155.
Yep.
And we're seeing game 1 -155 as well.
No bargain. It's not a big enough price for me to look at the Blues. It's just a big enough price for me to kind of be wary of laying that much with the Bruins. But if you're asking me who's going to win the series, I'm still going with the better team, and that's Boston.
The overall team, I can't disagree. Should be a fun series. See it and, get one of the, the old teams back into the Stanley Cup Finals with the Boston Bruins. Let's see if they get back there.
One quick note. I do think they're going to be low-scoring games, but playing unders because of the goalie situation with pulling the goalie, really dangerous to me. If you're going to be looking to play totals, I would go by period rather than full game.
Yeah, I got burned a couple times with a 5.5 that, when you're looking at a 5.5 especially, it's tough. There's no margin of error there.
You often get 2 goals at the end of the game. And overs that shouldn't be overs end up being overs.
Yeah. If it's, if they're sitting at 3-1 and they will pull that goalie, maybe 30 to 45 seconds sooner than they would have if it was a 1-goal game. And then all of a sudden, like you said, you get those two cheap ones, and those really do suck. I can tell you that. All right, guys. Well, let's talk some Friday night baseball. We're only going to talk Friday because obviously in baseball, a lot depends on what happens with the day before and the setup. And Thursday's getaway day, so some of the teams aren't playing today. Some of them played in the afternoon. But I pulled out 3 good matchups for Friday night. And let's start with the first one. And this one caused us a little bit of programming problems overnight. It was Tampa Bay. Originally Friday they had listed Blake Snell, and Cleveland was going with Shane Bieber. And Tampa Bay had undecided on Thursday. And then for a while they switched and moved Snell up on the rotation, and we're going to throw him Thursday. And then they thought better of that and left him on his normal day. But, Dave, I got to ask you a question, and I brought this to you when they did it 2 days in a row. Now I'm going to ask you doing it 3 days in a row. Is Tampa Bay going to the well too many times with this opener and getting all of the bullpen involved in these games the way they're doing it? Are they going to wear their bullpen out? do you think?
No, I don't think so, because Cash seems to have a good grasp on how long to leave guys out there for, how much rest they need between starts and between appearances. He basically can do no wrong. I mean, this guy, from a strategic in-game standpoint, you'll be hard-pressed to find anybody who's better than Kevin Cash at this point.
Looking at it for Friday night, Blake Snell, we know he got off to a horrible start this year, coming off, last year, dominating year last year for Snell. But I'll tell you what, last 3 starts, the buy sign is on.
He's ridiculous.
17 2/3 innings of work. He's allowed a grand total of 3 runs. His strikeout to walk ratio, 30-3. He's dealing it right now.
No. Okay, you think 30-3 is good? Bieber, his last 3 starts, 35-2.
Yeah.
Nice, huh?
Yeah, Bieber's been a surprise for Cleveland this year.
I mean, Bieber's got one really good pitch. And when he's commanding that, then his other stuff looks better. If he's not commanding the breaking ball, then the fastball becomes really average. The difference here is that Snell is facing a bad lineup.
They're even worse against lefties.
Yes. They're just a bad lineup. And I talked about this on First Pitch today. Talked about it on the radio show today. And I kind of get it, because, you're trying to build an offense around 2 offensive guys. But I still adhere to then make them your 1-2 hitters and get them together, and maybe you can scratch out runs that way, or at the very least put men on base for other guys. And I don't agree with Francona's lineup configuration. I would have Santana hitting leadoff. He's having a good year, and he's also really good at getting walks. And then Lindor, who's your best hitter, put him in the 2 slot, and then just hope you get lucky after that. Maybe Ramirez can snap out of his slump at some point, or whatever. But breaking him up 1-3 and putting Jason Kipnis, who's yesterday's news, in the 2 slot, this is just a bad lineup right now. Toronto's got more pieces to play with. He'll mix and match on a nightly basis. He had Willie Adames hitting cleanup on Wednesday night. It's like, what? Willie Adames hitting, and then they won again. They beat the piss out of the Dodgers in that game, in fact. I think on every level, I like Tampa here. Now, the problem is I'm going to have to also lay a price, and that makes it difficult. But Snell or nobody for me.
Yeah, we're looking at an overnight line right now, 135 with Tampa. And Bieber, as you said, Ralph, big surprise for Cleveland this year. I didn't expect him to be as consistent as he's been. He's going out there. He's giving you 6 innings.
Best guy.
He's been the most consistent on the staff.
Bauer isn't pitching that
fell
well.
back a couple games.
And Carrasco lost his velocity again last start, which you don't know what's going to happen from one next to the start to the next with Cookie. Bieber's been good.
4 of the last 5, he's gone 6+. Ralph, do you see him being able to tame this Tampa lineup?
Well, he's coming off a 15 strikeout, no walk performance. It was against Baltimore. I guess you always have to put an asterisk if it's against Baltimore. But, still, 15 strikeouts and no walks against anybody is good.
I'll say.
I agree that I would not play the Indians in the spot. I look to fade him against lefties. Indians are number 24 hitting against lefties. They're only averaging 7.42 hits per game when a southpaw is on the mound. It seems like an obvious play with the way these two, with their strikeout walk ratios, to like the under, but I'm going to lean with the under.
All right, I've got lean to Tampa. I just like the way Snell's pitching right now, and I just think if he's found the form that he had last year, he's going to be a beast the rest of the way, and I'm not stepping in front of him. And then my problem is with Cleveland, once Bieber leaves the game, I have no faith at all in the Cleveland bullpen.
Until you get to Brad Hand. By the way, as we're taping this, the Twins have now homered 7 times in today's game against the Angels. They're a monster.
Wow.
Cleveland's not catching them.
No. Oh, well, last week on the podcast, when Ralph and I talked about the baseball stuff, to me, they're the play as far as a futures bet, because I really do believe we're going to lose. They're going to win their division, and we're going to lose a very good team in the wild card, because we talked about it. I think all 3 positions in the AL East are going to make the playoffs. I think it's going to be Tampa, Yankees and Boston at the end of the day.
Houston and Minnesota.
Houston and Minnesota for them. So you're going to lose one good team in the coin flip game, in the wild card game, and then I'll take my chances with the Final Four the way they're playing. And if the pitching can hold up for them, but they're hitting the lights out of the baseball right now. It's amazing. Guys, moving to the next one, Philadelphia and Milwaukee. Philadelphia, as we talked about, almost blew one today. They had a huge lead in that game, and the Cubs come crawling back into the game and made a big threat in the bottom of the ninth. Philadelphia, same old story, man. Once you get past the starting pitching, not thrilled about this bullpen. They're playing their best ball right now, Philadelphia is. But they're going in and facing Milwaukee and Chase Anderson. Chase Anderson returned off of the DL on May 18th, and he pitched 4 innings against Atlanta, allowed just 1 run. It was unearned. Definitely was on a pitch count first start back. Should see him get stretched out a little more in this one, Dave. But Eckhoff goes for Philadelphia, and after 5 good starts, man, his last 2 have not been good.
Not too good, no. The problem with this game, and this is why, this is part of what the handicap of baseball is about. I can do all my work on this game, and still I'm not going to know until tomorrow whether it's possibly a play or not, because I don't know if Christian Yelich is going to be back in the Brewers lineup. He's got some back spasms. It's not the same back issue he had earlier where he missed like a whole week, but, they're a different lineup when he's not playing. So I'm going to reserve comment, and not because I'm selling it or anything like that. I don't know, and I need to find out what Yelich's likely status is before I even take a look at this game from a serious standpoint.
And on the Philadelphia side, to throw in there, because they blew the big lead, they had to go to the bullpen and use some pitchers to save this high-scoring game. They're traveling off of a game like that today. That's a disadvantage. It's a short travel, obviously.
The Brewers had the day off, obviously,
right.
So that means
advantage.
Mr. Hader is available.
Yes. Although he got touched up one game.
We talked about this with Joe Sheehan on the radio show today, and I offered the opinion that I think he's trying to strike everybody out. And what he's missed this year, it's been hard contact. That's gone a long way. So, you don't have to try and strike every single guy out.
Ralph, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I would have to just fade Eichhoff. I mean, he's got a 6.55 ERA against Milwaukee. You have Philadelphia, who has not been a good road team. They're 8-9 on the road since April 14th, 9-9 after the win today. But when they're an away dog, they're only 4-8. They're not scoring runs. I mean, they're only averaging 3.82 runs per game when on the road. To me, if the price comes right, and as Dave said, if the lineup is correct, Milwaukee would be the way I'm looking.
Yeah, my lean on this one is definitely on the side of Milwaukee, the home side here, with the day off advantage and the pitching bullpen getting lit up a little bit yesterday. I got to look to Milwaukee. The last one, and this is a quick rematch, Boston travels down to play Houston tomorrow. Houston took, I believe, 2 out of 3 last weekend against Boston. Chris Sale, talk about a guy that started the season out bad, but all of a sudden looks like he's figured things out. Everything went wrong for him in the month of April, but his May numbers have been solid. He's allowed just 6 runs in 4 starts in the month of May. And the last strikeout to walk ratio that we talked about and how good it was? For the month of May, Chris Sale has 51 strikeouts to just 6 walks. Definitely has found his rhythm. Is that the buy sign for you? But we're still stepping in front of one of the hottest teams in baseball in the Houston Astros. Dave,
Sale looks fine now. He's back in the mid-90s, and but still, this is a ballpark where if you make a mistake to a right-handed hitter, it's in the Crawford porch. Doesn't take much. It's like Fenway in that regard. Lefties can get burned. But Sale does look good. I'll tell you one thing. Boston got a big break today because this kid Weber, who can't break glass, had great command, and it was a nice win for Boston, and they didn't have to stretch the bullpen out to get that win today. But again, I hate to say the same thing, but I've got to do it, and that's just the way it is. J.D. Martinez had some back issues this week, and hasn't played the last few days for Boston. Got to know if he's in the lineup.
Yeah, it's a big part of their offense.
It's a huge part of the offense.
Miley, we've talked about this guy all the time. He goes out. He's finally had a game where he gave up more than 3 runs. 9 out of his 10 starts. Yeah, 9 out of 10 starts this season. He's given up 3 runs or less, and he had a streak dating back to last year.
Every start last year and this year was 23 straight starts where he'd given up 3 or fewer earned runs. But the streak finally did come to an end.
Yeah. And he gave up 4. It's not like he got pumped.
Yeah. 4, and I think he went 7. I think he went. Did he go 6 or 7?
6 full.
Yeah. So you look at him, but this is a guy that when you watch him pitch, Dave, he's not going to overpower anybody.
He's a command guy.
You know, his strikeout to walk ratio is only 37-13, 56 innings of work. That's not definitely by no means overpowering
he's
anybody.
He's an old school guy who gets soft contact, gets the ball and throws it. He doesn't fart around between pitches, and he locates his stuff well. And that's when I mentioned the Weber kid who pitched for Boston on Thursday at Toronto. He topped out at 89. That's the fastest pitch he threw the whole game was 89. But the Blue Jays couldn't do anything with him because he was locating the ball anywhere but the middle of the plate. And when you do that, you're going to do well.
Well, Wade Miley is the poster child for that. I know every time I sit there and I look at the metrics and everything, I want to go against this guy. But he just keeps throwing those good games up. But again, you're paying a price. As good as Houston's played, and this is where, again, you're looking at, you get that big name pitcher in there and you're paying for the price. I see an overnight number of 135 on sale. Ralph, you got something?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I wasn't sure of the line in my head when I was starting. And Sale, since Sale's gone to Boston, he's been a dog 5 times. And against Miley, he's not going to be a dog, but he was 1-4 in that role. Mark's behind us with the counter. Mark, since the 2017 season. So we have the 17 season, 18 season, 19 season. How many times has Houston been a home dog?
You won't need 2 hands.
Ooh, 8 times.
How about twice? Once in the regular season. October 29th, 2017 against Clayton Kershaw. They win that game 13-12. May 2nd, 2018, Keuchel against Severino. They lost that game 4-0. So you have the Houston Astros playing like they're playing. What are they, 18-2 the last 20 games? And you're going to make them a dog? I don't care who's pitching. I would have to back them in that role.
Yeah, this will probably be a pass for me because I just don't want to step in front of Chris Sale right now, but I don't want to also step in front of the Astros. This will be a fun one to watch. Boston's got quick revenge from last week. If they can reverse their results from last week, losing 2 of 3 there. Obviously, with Sale on the mound, they definitely have a good shot. But, boy, this Houston lineup, they can score runs in a hurry.
But their lineup could be short tomorrow night, too. Because Springer's a little bit dinged up, and Altuve's been in the DL, or IL, whatever.
Yeah.
So, it's part of baseball handicapping is check the lineups.
And we've seen the last 4 games, the lowest run production that we've seen from Houston in the last month. I mean, they scored 3, 3, 5, and 4, where they were putting up a lot of 8s, 9s, 10s. I mean, this team
they could be due for a mild regression. We'll see if Sale can get the job done against them. It's going to be a fun weekend.
Yes, for sure. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, you know what that means. It's best bet time. We'll be back here on the WagerTalk Podcast in a quick moment. Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. Before we jump into tonight's best bets, I got a special offer for all of our listeners. It's Memorial Day weekend, and we got a special 3-day offer. You can pick up your favorite guy from tonight's podcast. Dave, Ralph or myself, or hey, even better yet, take all three of us. If you use coupon code MEMORIAL25, you can take $25 off a 3-day package. 3-day package is $69, but with the coupon code MEMORIAL25, you get it at a discount, $25 off. That includes all plays, including 5%. And as we go into tape, I know we've had some runs. I don't want to jinx myself because I'm still playing this game, but we've got a 7-game winning streak, and we're in the 9th inning tied up with our play today. So hopefully we keep our streak alive. You can check out a 3-day package from any of the three guys. Dave, let's start with you. What are you looking at for your weekend best bet?
We'll go to the holiday evening matchup. I think it's in the evening at Boston as the Bruins and Blues skate in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals. The Bruins could be a little rusty. They haven't played in a long time. It's been, 11 days by the time Monday rolls around. I think this is going to be a really physical series. I think scoring could be at a premium early. So let's go first period under in Game 1 between the Blues and the Bruins. And you should be right in the even money area, maybe minus 120 depending on how the money flows. But I'm going to look for like 1 goal tops in the first period of that game. I don't care who. Well, I'll root for the Bruins to score it since I'm a Bruins fan. But I think this. I don't think you'll see much scoring early in that game.
Ralph, where are you going on your best bet?
The last couple of weeks have been good going against the Angels, and when they're facing a lefty, they are now 4-13 after the loss today. If they do lose the game, I think they're down 83-2 as we speak. But Texas has Minor, again, a lefty who has pitched very well this year. He's 3-0 lifetime in his 3 starts with Texas against the LA Angels, a 1.35 ERA. And again, we talk about it often. We talked about it in Handicappers Corner, Marco, against those teams playing lefties. And I'm going to continue to fade him. Well, a couple weeks ago, we were off last week. A couple weeks ago, we played Baltimore against them with a lefty, and they came through on a nice Sunday winner as well. So
at an underdog price, too.
When teams are just playing poorly in that role, don't be afraid to look at those righty-lefty matchups.
All right, I'm going to go to one of the games we talked about, and that was Philadelphia at Milwaukee. Just think with the travel day today with Philadelphia, and granted, it's not a big travel. You're going from Chicago to Milwaukee. That's a short travel. They played an afternoon game, but it just ended a little bit ago. A lot of runs scored, and used a lot of pitchers in that game as well. And we're going with Chase Anderson coming off the DL first outing. They had him on a pitch count. He pitched well in those 4 innings. I look for them to stretch him out. But more importantly, with Milwaukee, and this is a big deal, they've got a huge edge as far as the bullpen goes, especially when Hader is available and coming off a day off. For Milwaukee, you get rested Josh Hader, so you're going to get the best closer in there for you with Milwaukee if we are protecting that lead in the 9th inning. And with Philadelphia, the current form of Ekhoff, I cannot back him right now. He had a great start to the season, but the wheels have fallen off in the last 2 starts. And I am a guy that, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I will continue to look to go against him until he turns it around. So for our best bet, we're going to go ahead and look at Milwaukee on Friday night in Major League Baseball. I want to thank our guest tonight, William Bernanke from CG Technology, for joining us, taking us behind the counter as he does each and every week. Big thanks to our guys in studio, Ralph Michaels and Dave Cokin, providing good information as always. Behind the controls, Mark Seidel, making sure we all sound good. As always, a big shout out to Johnny Detroit and the entire crew in Michigan, and make sure this podcast gets out everywhere. You can subscribe to us on iTunes, listen on Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and all of the major media markets for podcast. Last but not least, I want to thank you guys, our loyal listeners. We truly appreciate you tuning in each and every week for the show. And finally, for myself, till next week, I'm Marco D'Angelo. Let's cash some tickets.